But 10 minutes every day, from 6:04 a.m. to 6:14 a.m. exactly, I am the only person on the earth. I don't think anyone notices that they go missing, that they disappear for a short time every morning. They certainly don't act like it. When everyone blinks back into reality, it's as if they never vanished in the first place. But I know the truth. I first noticed it on a Friday. I was on my way to work, the last day before my vacation. It was the first time I actually took any sort of personal day at my new job, almost a year since I started. I was flying out to meet some friends I hadn't seen in a while. We all lived near each other and would hang out all the time. But as we got older, we sort of drifted apart. Conversations and meetups became less and less frequent. That's why I was really looking forward to this trip. I planned to be back by Wednesday, but decided to take the whole week off anyway. I ride the train, so in the morning I leave my house at 6, walk to the station, then board the 6:15 train. It's early, so it's not hard to find an open seat. 10 minutes on the train and I'm off. Then 10 more minutes and I'm at work. But it was a different 10 minutes that set my heart racing and my mind spiraling into despair. On that Friday, from the time I got to the street until I made it to the station, everyone else vanished. I almost didn't catch it. It was an accident, really. Maybe if I hadn't turned my head, I could have continued on like normal. Never been thrown into a lifeless world every morning. The bus had arrived a little earlier than usual, coming to a halt at the corner of the street where I make my turn. I happened to look inside the bus as it rolled open the doors. What I saw was nothing. No one was in the bus. The lights were on, the engine running, but no driver, no passengers, no riders hopping off, and no one waiting to get on. I stared at the empty bus as the doors shut and the vehicle drove away, as if nothing was wrong in the world. I kept walking. I didn't believe what I saw. I told myself it must have been a self-driving bus. They have driverless cars, so why not a driverless bus? It's early too, so it's not odd that there was no one on the bus. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a bus with no passengers in all my time walking this route, but there's always a first time for everything. I told myself it was perfectly normal not to run into anyone. It was fine that every car that drove by I happened to look at had no one inside. Of course, the gas station lights were on with nobody inside. No shadows approaching from behind. No figures in the distance. All of this was normal. I made it to the station. Empty, but that wasn't unexpected. No one goes into the office on Fridays, right? I stood on the platform, watching the train pull into the station just like always. I didn't see anyone at the front of the train, but it was hard to see inside. No one was in any of the passenger cars either as they drifted past. I could have the train all to myself, I told myself while trying to get my breathing under control. The train finally stopped. I held my breath. The door slid open. I took a shaky step into the empty car. I blinked as my foot touched the inside of the train and there were people. Like a switch being flipped on, there were people suddenly seated and standing in a now half-full train. A woman from behind rushing onto the train bumped into me as I stood there in a daze. I quickly shuffled onto a seat and pulled out my phone. 6:14, right on the dot. I closed my eyes and tried to come up with an answer. I was tired, overworked. That had to be it. The rest of the day went by like normal. No one went missing. The train had people when I got on and off. The only time I was alone again is when I fell asleep at home, ready to get to my vacation. I had an early flight tomorrow. Boarding started at 6. I met up with my other friend who was on my flight. We would meet up with the others once we got to our destination, since we all lived in different places these days. Back in the day, we would all pile into a car, messing around for hours while we drove wherever we were going. But we grew up, moved away. Our lives were so different now. Less time to do things like this. It was hard not to feel a little lonely from time to time. At least I still had one friend who hadn't left home yet. He would be gone in a few weeks, off to some job a few states away, but for now, I wasn't alone. We had to sit at the terminal until our group got called, but since we were first, it wasn't long. We watched the long hallway stretch out to the opening of the plane, and soon after, they signaled it was time to board. I lugged my carry-on to the front of the line and had the lady at the desk scan my ticket. I moved past her and into the connecting tube. That's when it happened again. When my foot crossed the threshold, the sound of the crowded airport, of intercoms blaring and people complaining, sounds that told you the world was still around, suddenly vanished. I gazed down at the empty hallway I had just seen a mother dragging a crying child into, and stared at the nothingness that stared back. My heart started to hammer, yesterday's experience flooding back. I took a cautious step forward. The rolling of the wheels of my suitcase, the only noise left to fill the void. The slow footfalls quickened with each beat as I began to feel a sudden urgency to make it onto the plane, to get back to a place where there would surely be people, where I wouldn't be alone. I got to the end of the boarding tube and turned, but I was not greeted by a flight attendant smiling. There was no pilot waving me on board. There was no one. Just the open door of the passenger plane with me as its only rider. I walked past empty rows while trying to hold on to some sense of normalcy, looking for my seat and an open spot for my bag. I had no trouble finding that. I lowered into the empty space and closed my eyes. I could hear the steady hum of the engine, but nothing else. I kept my eyelids shut, trying to remember what a crowded airplane sounded like, what the noise of travelers hurriedly pushed towards their seat and stuffing their bags overhead sounded like. I kept my eyes closed, choosing to ignore the black scene that was playing out before me. I only opened them again when I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" my friend asked. I opened my eyes. The riderless rows now populated with dozens of tired passengers. My friend was in the aisle seat next to me, an old woman next to the window on my right. The screen on the back of the seat in front of me held the time. 6:14. I'm fine, I stammered out. Just tired. "I know it's early, but this is going to be fun," he replied, handing me a stick of gum while he popped another into his mouth. "We got a few days of no responsibilities ahead, just like old times." He sat back in his chair and stuck the complimentary headphones in. Not a care in the world. I put some music on as well and closed my eyes again. I would make sure to sleep in for the rest of the trip. By the time I had gotten back home, I had forgotten all about the 10 minutes I was the only person in the world. I had 5 days full of reliving old memories while creating new ones. Days of good food, crowded amusement parks, laughter. I filled my head with enough moments I didn't want to let go of. That emptiness of those 10 minutes were well out of my mind. However, on that Monday morning, when I returned to work for the first time in over a week, the absence of humanity returned to my reality. Once again, in that 10 minutes from the street until I stepped on the train, I was the only person still present in the world. I wasn't as thrown this time. My hands trembled as I passed empty cars and buses, but I started to get used to it. As the days stretched into weeks, I started to see those 10 minutes as my own, a time where I could be by myself. The whole world reserved just for me. Even after my friend moved away and I was finally the only one left, I still had those 10 minutes waiting for me, day after day. 6:04 to 6:14. I even started to go to crowded places on the weekends, just to see the stage we all act on clear from my solo. Every morning for 10 minutes, for 600 long seconds, I was the most important person on the planet. I could only keep up the lie for so long. I know that it wasn't the people disappearing. I'm not so naive to believe I'm so important that I wasn't allowed to be whisked away, to disappear from the earth for 10 minutes every day. It's not that the people were disappearing. I was. Every day I was taken out of a world that didn't need me. Even without my presence, it still ran like normal. Trains still ran. Planes still flew. The world kept spinning its wheel without missing a beat. It was my own existence that didn't matter. I come to this realization as I sit here on the train. It was empty at the station like usual. There was no one else waiting for the empty train. I got on like normal. Right at 6:14. But that was hours ago. And everyone's still gone.